Substance abuse, addiction, and mental health. Do you know someone that's struggling with any one of them? Are you dealing with substance abuse or mental health? You'd be surprised how many people out there are dealing with that. Today, on The Silent Struggle, episode 9, we will be speaking with Michelle Fernandez. She is a member of the mobile response team. I am Robert Asencio. And alongside of me is David Magnusson, retired police chief. How are you, David?
Doing good. How about you?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. Welcome, Michelle.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so today we want to go into your story, right? You have an excellent story. You've been, in the trenches. You have fought the battle. You persevered. You're in recovery. So let's get into it. What is Michelle's story?
Where do you want me to start?
Well, tell us about a little bit about you and what you're doing now, and then we're going to go back into what got you there.
Well, currently, again, as you mentioned, I work for WestCare's mobile response team. I'm a certified recovery peer specialist on the team. So that's,
And what is a recovery? I mean, a certified specialist.
Certified recovery peer specialist. So
peer specialist.
It's a person with lived experience, at least 2 years in recovery. And we go through a series of trainings to, be able to obtain our certification through the Florida Certification Board, supervised hours. We need to take an exam. But the most important piece to that role is the requirement of having that lived experience, that experiential piece, whether it be in substance use or mental health.
David, and when you were on the job, man, I mean, not only as a police chief, a command staff, but even on the road, you experienced, as we've shared over the last few episodes, we've had shared experiences with people who were battling substance abuse, right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it's there, and you'd like to think it would go away. Realistically, it's not. And that's why to be able to have somebody like Michelle right here, and what she does and what we're going to learn about is so important, because people getting that added help, that corner man, if I may use a boxing metaphor, which I commonly do, corner man, corner woman, in that corner to guide you in between rounds. Yeah. Say, this is what you need to do. Just listen to me. You'll get through the next round and you'll start building up points. That's what makes this so incredibly important. So I want to hear more, actually.
Yeah. So let's talk about some numbers real quick. This is from the Addiction Center. They estimate that approximately 21 million Americans have at least one form of addiction. To kind of put that in context, that's almost the population of the entire state of Florida.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks out there that are struggling. Absolutely. That's why what you guys are doing and having this conversation is so important. We need to continue.
So we were talking beforehand, and you shared with me a little bit about your story, and you're comfortable sharing that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, yep. So you shared that you struggle with addiction, and you had a really low point. Let's start there. Right, we build ourselves out of that hole, and show the progress that you've made, and now you serve to help others. But you shared that you had been arrested twice in 1 year.
I have been arrested twice in 1 year. Yeah, at the age of 35, back in 2011.
Tell us what you were going through.
Well, you and I had spoken that it was pretty much. I mean, there were already things that were taking place in my life, and even, throughout my recovery journey, things that, happened throughout childhood and whatnot that have, that influenced, right? But the eve of 2006 was when I really started to see my drinking starting to escalate, right? I started using other substances. And by mid-2006, within 6 months, my progression was quick. And it was swift. Within that year, I already started to experience some of the common consequences. One consequence that's not on that list, like if you go to treatment center, they kind of do the assessment and whatnot, it was really a loss of self. But, within 1 year, my career started being affected, prior to me doing what I do today and working in the recovery field. I was working in hospitality for 18 years. that started to be affected. The relationship started to be affected. But fast forward, in 2011, April 1st, April Fool's Day was my very first experience in being arrested. Both arrests were alcohol related. So what was going on? Things were just really, they had spiraled out of control at that point. My drinking and using was pretty much every day.
And how was the family life?
So relationships get severed. My family was concerned, but I had also really distanced myself from them. I was just so encapsulated with everything that I was going through, not only with the relationship that I was in, but also because of the misusing, right, the substance use. Yeah, so I was so, again, just so within that whole world. I distanced myself quite a bit from my loved ones.
Thoughts, David?
Well, you're using words like severed and relationships. I would surmise that as your journey went forward, you were able to fuse those back together and learn from what you have been through. So I'm sure that's an incredible story that certainly you'd like to hear as well. You're talking about the low points, but staying positive. How did you come out of it? What triggered that to get you going? Where exactly was that low point? I think you touched upon it. And
there were a few low points. There were a few low points.
Okay.
There was, a few consequences that I experienced, things that I struggled and suffered with. How I eventually climbed out of it, for me, I would say I kind of in my mind, it's 12 years. My battle was 12 years, right? With substances playing a role, right? So within those 12 years, those first 6 years, I always call it my dark period. There was I didn't know about recovery. I didn't know about a solution, so that was the darkest period. The other half, at that point, I was introduced, to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started to hear about recovery. In 2013, I was able to go to treatment, right? And for a couple of months only, because that's all my family could afford at the time. At that point, I was unemployable for a couple of years on food stamps and all of that. But long story short, really within those 12 years, it was because of others when I was introduced, right, to recovery, going to treatment, even in those 2 months, learning about substance use. Not only for myself, it was super helpful, for my family as well, right? Everyone was in the dark, trying to figure out what was going on and how can we get out of this.
Everyone suffers.
Everyone suffers.
Yeah, I don't think that there's no one, this disease is not discriminated against anyone, right?
Not at all.
The victim and the families who are become vicariously the victims, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So long story short, to answer your question, for me, it was really because of that sense of community, everyone, jumping in. And people who I would come across just jumping in and showing me compassion, showing me empathy, seeing other folks in recovery, right? I didn't believe it. I didn't have hope, but I would see that they were doing it. So there might be something to this. So it was really all that information, all of that, that love and compassion and support that was filtering through until I finally reached that final point, when I experienced my last reoccurrence of use, that I had surrendered. That's kind of a term that's used. Yeah.
That's admirable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
David, I wanted to get to Michelle's certifications because you've not only do you recover, but you make it a mission to help others, right?
Yep.
Man, that's badass. Thank you. So why don't you tell us about your certifications? I see 3 here.
Yeah. So, and without my recovery, I wouldn't have any of that.
Okay.
So, I'm proud, right? I'm proud because it has taken a lot of hard work. I still focus every day as best I can on my recovery. Again, without that piece, everything else pretty much will fall through the cracks. But I'm a designated recovery coach. Designations, I'm designated. I'm a recovery coach professional. I'm a certified recovery peer specialist with the state of Florida and a certified event interventionist. And for me, the journey in, that professional piece really, really began because of the death of a friend. A soul lost, right, to alcohol use disorder. And that's really what inspired me to ask the question, what more can I do? Reached out to a fellow colleague, in the field, right, who was my first therapist. So we had breakfast and I asked her the question, and she wrote down some information on a piece of, on a napkin, if I remember correctly. And I did some research, and I kind of looked, and I remember what I was doing in hospitality. And I'm like, this fits when it comes to the recovery coaching. So that's really how, that fire got, kind of ignited within me, was because of this loss. And thankfully, asking that question, what more can I do? And things have just evolved from there, right? To then becoming a certified peer specialist. I didn't know of the role. Someone told me, hey, have you heard of this? And, it was just like a hunger to learn, to grow, to evolve. And, all of these, on a professional aspect, it just feeds into my own recovery as well. It just continues to help me, build upon that foundation that I have, which I focus just on today, just for today.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you want to say something?
No, one question I would have, you used the word surrender, which is an interesting term, and I certainly understand it. Do you find, I know with the addiction, it's always a lifelong thing. You have to stay with it, and it's nothing that you put in the past. It just sticks with you. But as doing what you're doing now, do you feel an added, not pressure so much, but much more responsibility in looking after others as well as you? How do you do that? How do you manage that?
I mean, there's definitely a sense of urgency that I experience. Absolutely. I could be sitting across from someone, and you cannot help but to have those buttons pressed, right? And that's where the trainings come in, and learning how to be able to set boundaries and whatnot, right? I can't pour into somebody else's cup if I'm not pouring into mine. That's important and whatnot. But there is that sense of urgency. I'm grateful to be able to have that, bringing myself back to what I went through, right? And the challenges that I was having, that feeling of being alone and nobody understands and nobody's hearing me, I was, like you said, suffering in silence. There was so much going on inside that I just could not, I couldn't form a sentence as to, to figure out what is all this. So really to be able to be on the other side, if you will. But I love the peer specialist role because regardless of the professional aspect, I'm still a peer. I still see eye to eye with that individual.
Well, let's talk about that, right? So you work for the MRT, and you, I imagine, get assigned cases. It's for the audience perspective, right? You get assigned cases, you get assigned an individual, you go out and respond to them. How similar is it from what you experienced to what you're encountering out there in the field?
I mean, there's definitely aspects that I can relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I find myself, and look, with mobile response, a lot of the phone calls that come in, are more directed towards the mental health piece, right? We do receive phone calls, for individuals struggling with substance use, but nonetheless, I can relate to that feeling alone, that confusion. I've tried X, Y, and Z, and nothing seems to be working, right?
Yeah.
So I do, find myself.
So there's a stat from the, again, from the Addiction Center, that approximately 9.5 million Americans who have substance abuse disorder also have a mental health disorder. That's a fair number of people.
Yeah, co-occurring, right?
Yeah, which compounds the situation.
It certainly does.
So for anybody that wanted to get a hold of the mental MRT, you have a 1-800 number. Can you provide?
1-800-HELP-YOU.
How simple is that?
1-800-HELP-YOU, absolutely. No, the team is absolutely phenomenal. Every role in mobile response is important, from the dispatchers to the
Can you explain a little bit
PhDs.
about the team?
Sure. Yeah, we
function?
have the function. We have the dispatchers. A call comes in. The dispatcher receives the phone call. The team is dispatched, right? Our team of clinicians, they are absolutely outstanding, right? These women and men, like, they're on the front lines. For me as a peer specialist, like, I love, and I mentioned the term boots on the ground. If I'm able to, jump on a call with them, that's awesome, but, they really do a phenomenal job. So it is a clinician first approach. They go, they assess the individual to see, right, do they require hospitalization? The goal is to reduce that number, right? And once they're assessed and the decision is made as to, which way to go, it will get assigned to one of the peer specialists on the team. We follow up with these individuals, right, the individual that was served, and just to see, when it comes to resources, right, do they have access to resources, the information, what are the blocks and barriers, what are the challenges that they've been experiencing, and we work alongside with them and their loved ones. Oftentimes these calls are coming through and it's third party, right? They're calling on behalf of this individual that's going through what they're going through.
Any thoughts, David?
You used a couple of words earlier, and there seems to be a thread that has gone through every episode. Certainly when MRT earlier, weeks ago, and now, empathy and compassion. And that's probably on the mission statement.
Yeah.
Empathy and compassion. And that does go a long way. And certainly what the MRT does is phenomenal. And we've talked to other people, and they took a step back when we described it, not as well as you, but we described what they do. And they said, oh, really? Yeah. And
I'd add one more word there, a describer. And that's understanding, right? And insight.
Insight, yes.
Because, tell me if I'm wrong here. I remember when I was on the police force, and I must say, in attempting to uphold the law, I probably created more damage than good, right? And that's really hard to admit. But if I look at myself introspectively, I can see where I failed. For example, if I come across somebody that was in crisis, up until I was trained in CIT, I wasn't understanding what that person, I wasn't even thinking about that. What I was thinking about is officer safety, they violated the law. How do I get this person neutralized or basically in cuffs so that they're no longer a harm to themselves or us, right? And having you and your perspective and the MRT team out there, and then having the support of the CIT training provides a whole nother layer that, man, we, the older officers, did not have.
Yeah.
And that's really important. So your perspective is really important here. For the audience, can you give them some insight as to anyone that's struggling silently, how to go about seeking help, because they're not alone?
They're absolutely not alone. There are so many different local organizations that you can reach out to. Thriving Mobile Response, let me start there, right? When in doubt, 1-800-HELP-YOU. But, there are resources available. Thriving Mind, that's our managing entity. They have a lot of content on their website, right? 211, another resource, to be able to just pick up the phone. But definitely, local nonprofit organizations. There's so many individuals that are out there and helping and providing services for individuals in need as a whole.
What about somebody without insurance, who doesn't have insurance?
I would definitely, I would use, Thriving Mind. Thriving Mind specifically, focuses on individuals that are uninsured. So their resource directory, if you will, has a lot of great information and individuals that are available, to be able to walk and guide them through it.
What do you think?
It's a lot of information. It's a lot of good information, but you touched upon it. First of all, you used earlier when you were in the dark, and they're shedding. There's more light to be shed now. There's more light to be shed. Guide people to where they can get it. Obviously, the initial step is up to them, but there's help along the way. People like you in that corner, as they sit on that stool, going back to the metaphor again, they sit on that stool, they need guidance, and you're providing it. Bell rings, life in general, and they get up and they go into the next round. It's round by round approach, I would guess. And that's just something very solid.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So would you, I mean, I'm reading here that, let's see, 70% of people who tried an illegal drug, that's out of the between the ages of 13 and 18, wind up with some type of substance abuse. Is it that high? 70%? I don't think so.
About
It's the stat here says that 70% of people who tried an illegal drug
okay.
between the ages of 13 and 18 wind up with some form of substance abuse or dependence.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I there's too many that are suffering. You know, statistics are important, right? To be able to gauge, right, what's going on out there. But there's a lot of folks that are struggling. So we need to continue, at least for me, you know, having this conversation, right? Remaining person-centered, right? They are persons at the end of the day, whether it be with substance use or mental health. One is too many.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
One is too many. So we just have to continue doing all of these things to be able to be available and accessible to individuals that need the help.
Let's turn to police work. I remember responding to one of my officers or a couple of my officers different times. And one in particular was going through a serious struggle with alcohol. And I remember seeing that officer just combative and refusing that they had a problem, refusing to admit that they had a problem, and just lashing out at everyone. Do you ever deal with people like that in the force and the success rate of the officers? Because I remember the officers that I saw that went into treatment, just like the average person that went into treatment, there was a high rate of recovery.
The recovery rate is high. And again, from a management point of view, the words again, with empathy and compassion. If you're at a high level as a police executive and you don't have those, in my estimation, you're a failure.
Yeah.
Now, when you have those and you can reach out to the officer and you can give them the information where the light's shown and shined upon and get with them and then follow up with them too. That's just, okay, I sent them on their merry way. Follow up and show genuine care and compassion. That does go a long way. It has worked for me in those instances. Thankfully, it wasn't a lot, but the ones that we dealt with, it worked out. It worked out good because of the proactive approach for myself, those that worked for me, to get this person immediate assistance. It does work, and it is like night and day. I mean, they weren't bad officers whatsoever, but you knew something was off.
Yeah.
And you know what? You're not bad today, but you continue down that path, you very well could be a month or two, a year from now. So, you know, you nipped it at the bud. They were open-minded to it. The family also. That was another thing. The family was also very thankful to us, and nothing meant more to me than when I got a call a couple times from family just to say thank you for caring. I mean,
Do you think the culture is changing? The mindset, the acceptance that people who have trouble or struggles are not broken. They just need help.
I think we're definitely on the right track, but we need to continue. We need to continue. Again, having the uncomfortable conversation. You know, there's still a lot of light that it is helpful to shed, you know, when it comes to substance use and mental health. Right? Breaking the stigma.
There you go.
Yeah,
breaking that
breaking the
stigma. You say
stigma.
that all the time.
Stigmas, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have 5 minutes left. I'd like to give you 3 minutes to really talk to the public, give them an inspirational words, comment. I mean, you're a success story. And I want to see your progression because I think that, man, you show bravery beyond what most people are willing to even dig deep to harvest.
100%. Inspiration. I mean, the biggest piece that I've taken away, and again, this is because somebody else was telling me, and this is what I like to share with other people, is that we as individuals, as human beings, have worth, right? We are so worthy of being able to live a life that is happy, right? That has joy. we're going to go, life is life, right? And we learn how to walk through those moments as well. But, for me, recovery is absolutely possible, right? There is so many people out there. I'm one of them, right? Or I like to think that I am, that are more than willing to extend that hand, for someone that needs to just, have that conversation or just have someone listen, so that way we can help guide you and direct you. But recovery is absolutely possible. It takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of work, but it certainly is attainable, for somebody to achieve. And for those that are not ready, you might not, the topic of harm reduction, that would be a great topic to also talk about here, right? Not everybody that you come across is quite there yet, or where we would want them to be. We certainly want to make sure that they're safe and alive, right? To continue to have that conversation and provide whatever information may be helpful.
So again, the 1-800 number to reach out for help?
Help you. Help you.
Outstanding. David, any parting words?
Yeah, when you're going through life in general, right? You're going to lose a round or two, or you will. You could. Doesn't mean you lose the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say this again, sticking with boxing. Please excuse me. But what made Ali, what made Leonard greater than their talents was having somebody in their corner, in this case, Angelo Dundee, that
The
pushed
great
them.
Angelo Dundee.
Yes, the very great. That pushed them and was there to guide them. And that's what you're doing. And so I salute you for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and equally here, I salute you, man. I think, we don't usually look at people like this, but, you're amongst one of the heroes out there saving lives and addressing people's needs. I mean, who comes to you when you're in crisis, right? Generally, people will shy away. Somebody in crisis, you back away. No, man, you're charging forward. Thank you for that. And you're sharing your experiences. It's very important. And I hope that for those of you out there that are struggling, just take it into consideration. You're not alone. There are people like Michelle out here that are willing to help. 1-800-HELP-YOU is a phenomenal asset in Miami-Dade County in that confidential. They'll hear you out. They'll send the team if you need to, or if they feel that it's deemed necessary, they'll send a team out and you will receive the care that you need in the follow-up. Very important. You're not left alone. I can't say it enough. Michelle, I can't thank you enough. I would love to continue the conversation. Certainly, we have much more to talk about in the future, but I can't tell you thank you enough. I mean, I'm thinking back. That's why I'm pausing, because I'm reflecting on people's stories that I wish you had. There was a team like MRT out during that time. We probably would have been able to save some lives.
That really is an amazing
Yeah, man.
MRT. That really is.
It's a great resource.
I was talking to my mom. I think I shared this with you. I was talking to my mom and just telling her about my day, and she looked at me. She's like, I wish I would have known that there was something like this, when we were going through what we all were going through, and she was trying to figure out, how can I help my daughter? And so it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, helping others is, if you don't do it, then what is it worth, right? At the end of your life. So I think we have purpose. So on that note, I want to thank the Millers, Miami's Community News team, Rachel, right? I got it right? Tommy, the producers today on the show, and all of you who are watching, thank you. My co-host, David Magnusson, always here. Michelle, thank you. For the next one, please drop us a line. Let us know what you want us to talk about, but keep the feedback coming, because we really enjoy it. And thank you for those that have already commented.